Fortnite has more Easter eggs and references than you could ever imagine. So today I am going to be going over some of the best Easter eggs from every single season, starting out with Fortnite's first ever Easter egg, and it still shows up to this day. It all started in season 1 with the secret gnomes that appear in brick walls. You might have seen one of these gnomes before without even realizing it. Randomly, when placing a brick wall, a little gnome just appears. And I'm not talking about Courage JD. Instead, it's just this little lawn gnome that just shows up, and it's Fortnite's first ever Easter egg. It actually has a 1 in 100 chance of happening anytime you build a brick wall, but my chat still blows up every time they see one. Some honorable mentions from this season would be the default dance emote reference and the Truckosaurus Rex, which is actually a Simpsons reference, which is crazy because we might be getting a Simpsons collab soon. There are a lot of Easter eggs, so I'll throw in a few honorable mentions per season. In season 2, the item shop was way smaller than what we're used to today. There weren't as many cosmetics, and Ninja was desperate for more skins to buy. He even tweeted at them saying that he would use a toilet plunger pickaxe if it existed. A week later, Epic dropped the plunger. They even threw in a katana through the plunger to make it match Ninja's vibe. It was such a cool moment seeing Epic responding to the community in real time, and it wouldn't be the last time they do something like this. We also saw the floss emote added, which was from a viral moment from the Backpack Kid, and this wasn't the only time this emote went viral. In season 3, a table with a special letter read, "Andrea, will you go to prom with me?" signed from Eric. This was from a Fortnite player of the name Eric Grulk, who asked Epic Games if they could help him make a special proposal to his friend Andrea. And for those wondering, Andrea saw the note. We also had a Snoop Dogg reference in season 3, which is insane to think about because now there was a whole season around him. The tidy emote is the exact dance that you see in the Drop It Like It's Hot music video. There weren't icon emotes back then, so this was just a reference, but it didn't come back to the game for a long time due to it being a little too similar. Speaking of icon emotes, this was actually the first time Fortnite added a streamer reference as a cosmetic before we had the icon series, because CDN the Third and his positivity logo was actually included as an emote in the battle pass. In season 4, Risky Reels was a fan favorite POI for many reasons, but one of the Easter eggs you could find here was that the now playing sign actually changed every update. Not only did it change, but the names of the movies referenced were real movies. There were some movies like Carbide Returns, which references Superman Returns, Valor Origins, referencing X-Men Origins, Omega's Revenge, a nod to Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. These were some really special details Epic cooked up. And in season 4, we got the fork knife meme from this tweet, and it became a classic. We also had one of the craziest teasers we've ever seen in any game. Llamas started showing up in Europe. A Der Burger was found in the desert. There was a card that people found at the burger that had a phone number on it, and when you called it, it played the sound of a rift. Epic went all out for these Easter eggs, especially in the early seasons. And it doesn't stop because in season 5, we got Worlds Collide, and Fortnite started blending real world with the island. We saw a drift get dragged from our world, a new desert biome, the ATK was the first 4-person vehicle, and the Der Burger came back. Fortnite started blurring the lines between reality and game, and we had never seen this before. But the iconic Easter egg from this season came from Muselk trying to save Chapel Doodle. He tried to do it and it went completely wrong. He ended up sending him back to the lobby, but Epic placed a memorial grave for Chapadoodle, and that is just insane. Season 5 is also where Ali A finds his first Diplodocus.
What's the name of this guy again? I forgot.
Diplodocus, isn't it?
And that ended up becoming his icon emote. In season 6, we had the first fan created skin concept that ended up being added to the game, Tender Defender. This one has a very wholesome backstory. It started as Chicken Trooper, a drawing from an 8-year-old named Connor. His father posted the drawing on Reddit and the community absolutely ran with it, turning his idea into a full concept. Epic saw the hype and positive energy and decided to bring it to life as Tender Defender. Also in season 6, we got Little Kev, who was added as a back bling. Epic added it as a direct nod to us calling the cube Kevin. At the time, nobody expected this random giant cube to become one of Fortnite's most iconic characters, but here we are. In Season 6, Fortnite also introduced pets into the Battle Pass, but then in Season 7, one of those pets actually turned out to be Mary Munchkin. This pet stands out for a hilarious reason. He's basically Fortnite's take on the gingerbread man from Shrek. The design, the attitude, and if you listen close enough, he even sounds like him. And in the movie 21 Jump Street, you might remember that Channing Tatum had one of the most iconic scenes in the movie with his "My name is Jeff." Well, Fortnite actually went and added it on the bottom of the paper plane glider. It's kind of hard to spot unless you're looking through replays. In Season 8, Lazy Lagoon showed up, and with it there was a subtle nod to the movie Castaway. If you checked out the tiny island nearby, you would see an SOS symbol in the sand straight out of the movie. But Epic didn't stop there. They also added in a lone soccer ball as a subtle reference to Wilson, Tom Hanks' volleyball. Just some small details to show that Epic really loves movie characters. Also in Season 8, Fortnite introduced the Ballers. The design felt like the gyrospheres from the Jurassic World movies, and back then there was a ton of hype and speculation about a Jurassic World collab dropping in the future. It never happened, but Epic's always full of surprises. And then the classic fork knife meme even made its way into the map as a landmark shaped like a giant fork and knife. Season 9 is when Fortnite really started cooking on these Easter eggs. One of the biggest came from a collab the community had been begging for: Stranger Things. Because in Mega Mall, you could spot the Scoops Ahoy ice cream shop. But here's the crazy part. It was added before Stranger Things Season 3 even premiered. Mega Mall dropped on May 9th, and Stranger Things Season 3 didn't release until July 4th. This was literally an early teaser for the show. And later in Season 9, we started to see this mysterious door to the upside down popping up around the mall. It would teleport you to random spots, and it just made the whole collab feel so immersive. This was easily one of the most insane crossovers we had in Chapter 1, and the hype around it was unreal. And the fork knife reference made another appearance because Epic turned it into an actual fork knife pickaxe during this season. And in the final season of Chapter 1 Season X, we had the Fortnite World Cup, a moment so massive for Fortnite that it's almost impossible to recreate today. Nyrox and Aqua made history by taking home the win for duos, and then Booga absolutely dominated to secure the World Cup title in solos. This was such a huge moment from the game that Epic actually added trophies in-game to honor them. Placed at their landing spots, Nyrox and Aqua's trophies sat in Happy Hamlet, and Booga's could be found in Lucky Landing. It was such a clean way to immortalize one of Fortnite's biggest moments in tournaments ever. And for all the Kevin fans out there, Epic actually added cube memorials into the game. One popped up at Loot Lake, the last spot Kevin was spotted, and another one on the mountain where he was first created. Between Season X and the Chapter 2 Season 1, we had the Black Hole. And just when you thought Fortnite couldn't stop the insane events and collaborations, they literally shut off the game for a few days. But here's where it gets wild. During the Black Hole downtime, there were numbers that kept appearing, and not only that, but players realized the screen actually responded to inputs. Everyone was trying random combinations just to see what would happen, and someone cracked it. The Konami code up, up, down, down, left, right, BA triggered a mini game where you could play a slice of pizza shooting Durr Burgers. Technically fighting against Jonesy and Peely, but their scores were a little inflated. It was a really cool surprise, especially while the game was down. And in Chapter 2 Season 1, the Easter eggs do not stop, because there was this little pile of pink donuts, and if you know, you know. This was a clear nod to Homer Simpson. It felt like one of the most random epic details at the time, but now with all the leaks about a possible Simpsons season, it's all starting to add up. I just can't believe Epic was building this up for so long. One more thing I want to mention about Chapter 2 Season 1 is the little dinosaur Triceratops. They were in the parks at Weeping Woods, and at first glance they may seem like a couple of cute random dinosaurs, but these are actually direct references to the Fortnite PvP mode that was tested back in 2015. That version of Fortnite never officially dropped, but it's crazy to see the references making their way into BR. Chapter 2 Season 2 easily had one of the most unique battle pass layouts we've ever seen, but it gets better. If you clicked on the vents in the menu, it would take you into Deadpool's secret room. Epic went all out with Deadpool's details this season. There were notes and drawings, classic Deadpool breaking the fourth wall, fully aware he was about to show up in Fortnite. He even had a computer where all of his challenges were listed out, and it was a fun touch and made the battle pass even more special. Looking at the battle pass, Tina looks like Fortnite's version of Tiny Tina from Borderlands. The shark actually came straight out of another Epic Games project, Spyjinx, Epic Games spy game. It wasn't just inspired by it, they pretty much did a one-to-one creation and dropped it right into Fortnite. The last thing I want to mention from Chapter 2 Season 2 is that players noticed torn up posters all over the No Sweat Insurance building in Lazy Lake. At first, they looked like random scraps, but once the full images were revealed, you had a floating house in the middle of the water. The house was chilling waist deep with floaties on, and even Peely swimming with a massive shark underneath him. Sure enough, they were teasing the massive flood that would completely change the map in Season 3. Now for Season 3, Chapter 2, hear me out. This season was pretty much fully underwater, so it was a little bit more difficult to find Easter eggs from it, but there is an interesting one. Fortnite added an achievement called Shark Repellent. You got this achievement if you did 1966 damage to a loot shark. This was a reference to the 1966 Batman movie. There's this hilarious scene where Batman is getting chomped by a shark and Robin just casually pulls out a can of shark repellent. Epic loves their comic book references, so it made sense they slipped this one in during the flooded season. We also got the tiniest violin emote, and there's no way this isn't a nod to SpongeBob SquarePants, the scene where Mr. Krab uses it for Squidward. The Marvel season was packed with Easter eggs, but one of the coolest details was Thor's pickaxe. Only skins that were worthy could actually wield it, just like in the movies and comics. The pickaxe had text on it saying anyone worthy can wield the pickaxe, and at first, Thor was the only one who could use it. But later, Epic updated it so Captain America and Moon Knight could too. If you tried to equip it on a skin that wasn't considered worthy, it would just turn into a default pickaxe. Such a small detail, but so clean and true to Marvel lore. And big Marvel fans may also notice that in Wolverine's intro cinematic, he actually lost his memory. He looks surprised when he notices his claws pop out like he didn't know they were there. This is actually a reference to a comic book storyline where Wolverine actually suffers from memory loss. In Chapter 2, Season 5, the Predator was added as a secret skin this season. Back then, Epic loved dropping subtle hints for secret skins. Leading up to it, there was a whole storyline of Predator hunting Agent Jones while Jones tried to outsmart him. Eventually, Jones used his portal device to bring Predator to the island, and bro, just listen to this creepy Predator noise that you would hear on the map. And during the Season 3 trailer, Epic showed us Midas getting absolutely destroyed by a shark, and everyone thought he was dead. But over at Holly Hedges, players started noticing random golden items like this golden toilet, which felt like someone was stealing Midas's stash. And then the royalty loading screen from the battle pass had fans convinced a female Midas was on the way. At this point, the idea of Midas returning became a full-on meme in the community, but it turns out they weren't too far off. Now in Chapter 2 Season 6, you might have missed this Easter egg. The super styles from this season turned the battle pass characters into solid gold, which means that if you played enough, which took a lot of playing, you could have a fully golden Lara Croft in game. Here's the cool part. In the very first Tomb Raider game, there's a secret where when Lara jumps into King Midas's hand, she turns into full gold. This looks like Epic's way of tying together a little detail from her origins. And in the Chapter 2 Season 6 trailer, we saw Jones fall into a bush, and you can see him take 99 damage, which means for the rest of the Zero Crisis event, he was fighting with 1 HP. What an absolute legend. In Chapter 2 Season 7, we finally got the Rick and Morty collab people have been asking for. Rick showed up in the battle pass, but fans were kind of bummed that there was no Morty. There was an issue that Morty was way shorter than Rick, and Fortnite skins have to be a certain height, so Epic came up with a hilarious solution. They put Morty in a mech suit and gave us Mecha Morty. And if you watch the trailer closely, it's almost an exact remake of the classic Brute Squad loading screen. It felt like Epic's nod to the community's love-hate relationship with the mechs, which was classic. And then finally in Chapter 2 Season 8, there was a really interesting Easter egg. Normally in Fortnite trailers, we see the battle pass skins show off like they are in game. But for Chapter 2 Season 8, Epic did something that we never saw before. In China, there are strict rules around showing things like bones, skulls, or blood in video games. So the Torin skin actually had to get modified for the Chinese version of Fortnite because her original mask had a skull design. And instead of editing two different trailers, Epic just put the China version of Thorin on the global trailer. It was such a subtle change that most players didn't even notice, but such a cool detail. We also had the war effort donation boxes this season, and if you donated to it, you spawn minis. And if you spam donated, the minis actually stacked up in the shape of a banana, which was funny because JB Chimpanski was the one leading the donations. But Chapter 3 Season 1 was the Spider-Man season. We have obviously the Daily Bugle, an entire POI referencing the Daily Bugle from Spider-Man, the web shooters so they can swing around like Spider-Man. It was an absolute amazing season, especially if you were a fan of Spider-Man, but Epic wasn't quite done. There were a lot of little hidden Easter eggs. So if you explored the Daily Bugle closely, you would spot newspapers scattered around, and one of them actually featured an image of the Green Goblin. It was very subtle, but a very cool Easter egg teasing that his skin would be coming to Fortnite. And not long after, Green Goblin, of course, joined the item shop, proving that Epic does love giving us hints for future collabs and future skins, and sometimes it's right under our noses. We also had an Indiana Jones reference. There was a refrigerator that was randomly in the middle of the desert, and in the movie, Indiana Jones actually survives a nuclear blast by hiding in a fridge that gets launched across the desert. This was hinting at his future collab in a future season, which of course he ended up coming. But now let's move on to Chapter 3 Season 2, a perfect Easter egg from Epic. Everyone knew Tim the Tat Man was rocking the tomato head for most of Chapter 1. That was his main Fortnite skin, but he was also known for another thing: constantly tying to fall damage. It even cost him qualifying for day 2 of the World Cup qualifiers. So in the Chapter 3 Season 2 trailer, Epic threw in a subtle Easter egg. Tomato Head was casually falling, taking fall damage in the background when all the builds disappeared. And it was such a clean and hilarious Easter egg, and everyone knows it was referencing Tim the Tat Man. Even he ended up tweeting about it. And you might remember this glitch where if you threw a tire at the Foundation statue, it would cause it to fly across the map. Well, Epic made it so that the Foundation NPC actually sold tires. And in Chapter 3 Season 3, there was a sick detail for Dragon Ball Z fans. Before the Kame house officially showed up on the island, players noticed a corp capsule sitting on a table in an unmarked house sitting on a tiny island. The house already resembled the Kame house a lot, but Epic hadn't confirmed it yet. Later on, it officially became the Kame house, and the capsule was an awesome teaser leading up to that. On top of that, when Beerus arrived to the game, Epic nailed his aura completely. He's still the only skin in the game where if you use the charge up emote, you'll get the signature purple glow instead of the normal one, straight from the show. And for the football fans out there, you might know how much Patrick Mahomes loves ketchup, to the point where he puts it on his Thanksgiving turkey. So naturally, Fortnite packed his Fortnite icon skin with a bunch of ketchup references. All right, so in Chapter 3 Season 4, we saw Midas's gold finally meet its match. For the first time ever, Midas couldn't turn weapons gold because the chrome effect was actually stronger. It literally overpowered his ability. But let's talk about where the chrome inspiration for the season might have come from. Fans noticed huge parallels to the Matrix. The way Chrome takes the scientist in the trailer is super similar to how the liquid metal consumes people in the Matrix. And Donald Mustard himself even showed up in the Matrix Resurrections, which is wild to me. And speaking of wild, in the trailer, we actually got a glimpse of Luke Skywalker floating in a tank next to a llama and a banana. Pretty interesting. And in Chapter 4 Season 1, Rift encounters started showing up all over the map. We saw a lot of different references to Fortnite characters in these events, and some of them were absolutely insane. We had Little Whip hanging out in his Softies ice cream truck selling ice cream, a detached living room with Peely begging to leave aged Bunker Jonesy, and even a rock with 3 loot llamas, which looked like a reference to the 3 llama spray from the Season 4 Battle Pass. And there was a lot more. And then Epic even updated with Winterfest Rift encounters that had Mr. Dappermint singing a carol with 9 peppermint lollipops surrounding him. It felt like every single Rift encounter was its own little Fortnite short film packed with different references. Over in Slappy Shores, there was this tattoo parlor where players started calling it the Ink Squid. Epic turned it into a full-on Fortnite history museum. And there was a llama statue from the old Coliseum, a giant skull from the desert biome, and even skateboard decks showcasing styles from the different years. There was a ton of art on the wall showcasing Midas, Meowscles, Peely, and Fishstick, and Chaos Agent even had an entire wall dedicated just for him. The details in the shop were insane. In Chapter 4 Season 2, Fortnite went all out for the Attack on Titan collaboration. Anvil Square felt like it was pulled straight from the show. There was even a secret base in Anvil Square that was an exact replica of Aaron's father's room. It was actually insane. And then in Aaron's rewards for his cosmetics, you could earn the A World Without Walls loading screen, and this was almost an exact copy of the season 1 Attack on Titan poster. It was such a clean reference, especially if you're an Attack on Titan fan. And then in chapter 4 season 3, Fortnite did not hold back with the Futurama collab. It was literally a 1-for-1 recreation to Futurama's iconic Planet Express intro. It's so spot on, you would think that Epic just took it straight from the show. And in-game, they kept the references going, because you could actually spot the Planet Express crashed right into a massive billboard in Mega City. And then there's Bender. When you would interact with a vending machine, he would ask, "Didn't I have a baby with you once?" Which is a hilarious nod to one of his classic lines to the show. Epic just continues to nail these collab references over and over again. Then in chapter 4 season 4, we broke into more vaults than we could count. Over in the Eclipse Estate vault though, Epic snuck in some detail behind some unbreakable glass, one of them being a golden Midas hand just sitting there like a trophy. When Kato Thorne stepped out of his time machine, players noticed a specific detail, 3/25/2020 displayed on it. And that is not some random date. That is the exact date that Oro first was in the item shop, which is a key detail because when Kato walks out of the time machine, he's actually holding Oro's head. Then we finally got chapter 4 season OG. When season OG dropped, Fortnite hit us with the Invincible collab, and that was already huge. But this Easter egg isn't about a collab in game, but rather the Easter egg that was in the show itself. In one of the episodes, you can actually spot the Dragon's Breath sniper pulled straight out of Fortnite. That was a really cool crossover, and I wasn't expecting it when I was watching the show. And then in the OG Battle Pass, we got the flashback breakdown emote. It combined 8 original emotes into one. You had Ride the Pony, Work It Out, Break It, Groove Jam, The Worm, Breakdown, Disco Fever, and even Glitter. This was the perfect emote for nostalgia. And then the Re-OG music pack is actually a massive W for music fans because Epic brought in Metro Boomin, the producer behind Future, The Weeknd, and Drake, and gave the season's soundtrack a whole different vibe. In chapter 5 season 1, we finally got the Family Guy collaboration after years of Easter eggs and teasers, but what it came with was insane. First, the punching bag emote, pure gold. Every time you use it, it cycles through a different Peter Griffin laugh straight from the show. Epic also made sure to include the Peter Copter, which fans instantly recognized, and they even went as far as to add the Butt Scratcher pickaxe. Then there was Boss Peter's death animation, the direct reference to how he collapses on the sidewalk in the show. It's easily one of Fortnite's most detailed collabs. Also in chapter 5, we got one of the most viral clips of the season. A player's car somehow got wedged between 2 trees and it just got stuck. They posted the clip to Reddit and it absolutely blew up. A few weeks later, Epic decided to lean into the meme and actually added a permanent car stuck between those 2 exact trees. One more hilarious Easter egg this season is there was a weird deer-shaped bush outside of Grand Glacier with a chest hidden behind it, and when players asked Epic about it, they responded with a pain in the butt. All right. But then in chapter 5 season 2, the Avatar collab had come with some really cool references to the show. Before Aang was officially released, you could actually find an iceberg with a glowing orb in the middle showing him frozen inside. This is exactly how he's first introduced into the show. And of course, we got the My Cabbages emote, except in Fortnite's version, the poor guy actually manages to save his cabbages. Chapter 5 season 3, Epic keeps getting better and better with the Easter eggs. They bring in some amazing collaborations to the game. In this season, we had tons of Fallout Easter eggs throughout the battle pass and even in the game itself. We got Nuka-Cola as a healing item, and Fallout fans might have noticed that every time you used one of them, you actually got 1 gold in your pocket because of course the bottle cap was the currency in Fallout. And then over at the Nitrodome, you could actually spot iguanas on a stick, which is a food straight from Fallout. And even the Battle Pass went all out with the Fallout wrap that had an actual kill counter built into it. If you look closely at the T60 Power Armor loading screen, they snuck in the Zapatron there, and Epic really went hard with all the details during the season. There were some random piles of lemons scattered around the map, and at first it felt a little random, but if you interacted with them, they actually gave you XP, and it was a sneaky Easter egg teasing the Pirates of the Caribbean collab, which happened later that season, since lemons were historically used to help sailors prevent scurvy. And it doesn't stop, because in chapter 5 season 4, Doomstat and Castle Doom were 2 of the biggest POIs filled with the most amount of Easter eggs we've ever seen. They went all out for the Marvel fans. First, there was a basement in Doomstat that belonged to a die-hard Iron Man fan. You'd find old Iron Man items scattered around on an old TV playing Marvel vs. Capcom, which was a nod to the classic game. And then when you fought Doom in his castle, his diving move was exactly the same animation from the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 game. And speaking of Doom, we have to talk about all the hidden Easter eggs in his castle. It was packed full of trophies from fallen Marvel heroes. Namor's horn, the Thing's entire body turned into Doom's throne, Doctor Strange's broken necklace, Mr. Fantastic literally folded into a bouncy ball, Silver Surfer's iconic board snapped in half and destroyed, and then Sue Storm, but it's just a chair. However, since she's Invisible Woman, it's actually implied that she's sitting in there watching you while you stare into her cage, which is actually insane. And then outside the castle, you have a little ice cream shop called Victor Von Scoop. And if you watch the news on the TVs in the raft, it actually explains that Doom gained the people's trust by handing out free ice cream. And once he had the trust, he took over the island. Was it really that easy? And the last thing I'm going to mention about this season is the direct reference that Peely has with his emote Peelverine Remembers, referencing the iconic Wolverine meme where he's just lying in bed looking at a photo frame. And then we got Chapter 2 Remix, and that had a ton of Easter eggs with all the collabs that it included. One of my personal favorites was the RG minigun. Not only did you get this from the Spaghetti Grotto, but the fact that it displayed and played the entirety of Rap God as you shot it was incredible. Risky Reels also returned with Chapter 2 Remix, and it had a camera that you could actually interact with. And when you did, it would replay the Snoop Dogg and Ice Spice live Fortnite events. It was a sick detail added for the players who missed the event, and players might also remember how insane the cars were this season with their hydraulics. But a little detail you might have missed is if you stayed idle in Snoop Dogg's lowrider and had the radio turned on in the car, it would just start bouncing on its own. And for the current chapter of Fortnite, there is still so much to unpack because in Chapter 6, Season 1, Epic added Floodgate as a POI. And when you go to check it out, there's a basketball at the top of a zip line with a basketball hoop at the bottom. And this is a reference to the world record for the highest basketball shot ever recorded, which just happened to be from a dam. Over near Demon's Dojo, players found an underground maze that actually hid a secret gnome hideout. Then across the map around Mass Meadows, there was a smiley face made entirely out of chests and slurp barrels. As for show references, fans spotted a random toilet and umbrella, which felt like a nod to Rick and Morty. There's a lot of small, fun Easter eggs throughout this season, but it gets a little bit spicier in Chapter 6 Season 2 because that's when we got the Mortal Kombat collab. If you don't take damage while using the Sub-Zero gloves and you eliminate an opponent, you get a flawless victory voice line, which sounds like it's straight from the game. This is one of the coolest Easter eggs they've ever added. Flawless victory. And then the frozen treat car emote was the exact same move Sub-Zero does in Mortal Kombat 11 when he pulls out his ice cream cart. Another small detail from Season 2 was in Lone Wolf Mansion. Fletcher King actually had paintings of himself all over the mansion, but if you look closely, he's actually recreating the iconic Leonardo DiCaprio poses from the Titanic to the Great Gatsby. And then probably the most known Easter egg from the season was the hot tub with the max capacity 3 sign. They weren't kidding. If you were in a squad and the fourth person jumped in, the whole squad was shot up in the air, and most of you, if not all of you, were dying to fall damage. And now we're moving on to the Star Wars season Galactic Battle. Although I'm not the biggest Star Wars fan, Epic added a ton of Easter eggs from the movies and the shows during the season that Star Wars fans can really appreciate. Starting with the trailer. Marshmallow just casually blending in with the stormtroopers like he's been there the whole time. And I'm still wondering what secret Marshmallow knows about Fortnite because he has the most amount of skins, edit styles, and he's like always in the trailers. But now for Star Wars specific Easter eggs, Evie's Battle Pass style had Easter eggs as well. When you equipped her Jedi style, she's rocking the signature Padawan braid just like Obi-Wan and Anakin. But if you swap her over to the Sith style, the braid's gone. The braid is obviously tied to Jedi training. There was also a lot of questions about those busted up llamas around the map. You'd be able to jump into them and they would heal you, which was cool, but this was actually a reference from The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke had to survive on the Hoth planet, and he hides inside a tauntaun for warmth. Hopefully I said that right. Kind of gross if you know the reference. And then now for the current season, Chapter 6, Season 3. This season's already full of Easter eggs. Things like Superman being literally invincible. He doesn't take any damage. He doesn't damage back. It's very fitting. However, if you use a fishing pole on him, he will decide to pull out an SMG and want to fight. Then in some of the new POIs like Utopia, there are several signs teasing a Simpson collab like donuts. and possibly the bug theme season as well. There's also a no dancing sign near the club dance floor, and if you actually dance there, you get launched up into the air, which is a pretty good glider redeploy. And while the season's not over yet, I wouldn't be surprised if Epic continues to add more surprises. Fortnite OG Season 4 didn't hold back on the Easter eggs either, because Ninja actually got a hilarious memorial on the map, a tombstone right where he fell trying to climb back up after Lupo tricked him and only dropped him 1 brick to build back up. And then Epic couldn't resist bringing back one of the most iconic challenges of all time: search 7 chests in Risky Reels, the challenge that had you literally sweating back in the day. I hope you guys enjoyed these Easter eggs. There's gonna be plenty more because Fortnite is all about collaborations and Easter eggs. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.